All right, everybody. Hello. This is Flea Market Fantasy number 12. This is a very special episode. As always, I am your co-host, Mike-DELL, and I'm joined by...
Mike-DELL of the LCS Hockey Radio Show.
And...
Oh, yeah, we have a special guest.
Yeah, we should mention that. Very special. For the first time ever, we have 3 hosts tonight. So tell us all about our co-host tonight, Mike-DELL.
Well, longtime listeners of the LCS Hockey Show will know this next guest. Also, if you've ever listened to the Ed Show, he's a prominent figure on there. He's my personal attorney.
Really?
This man has kept me out of jail more times than I can recount. Ladies and gentlemen, Tuffy.
Hello.
There he is.
Thanks for having me.
There's Tuffy. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Tuffy's work, he is a practicing attorney. Right, Tuffy? You're a lawyer.
Yes.
He's from the Chicago area.
Well,
we won't say
sure.
exactly so the groupies don't get to him.
So Tuffy's not your Christian name.
No, it's a...
No. Also, if you consider like the whole of Illinois, the Chicago area, that is true.
Yes. We just say he's Chicago's favorite son. Also, he's very cheap. That's the other thing you ought to know about Tuffy.
Yeah.
He's extraordinarily cheap. But he loves Star Wars. And that's why we invited him here on this episode. Because, Mike-DELL, this week, it was your pick.
Yes.
And what did you select?
Well, as a tie-in with the upcoming movie, I picked Star Wars, the Marvel comic book, number 7. And the reason I picked this issue is because it's the first issue of the series that takes place after the original movie, A New Hope.
Yes. Knock off this New Hope crap. It was Star Wars. That's
Okay.
It was Star Wars.
Yes.
This comic came out in 78. The movie came out, of course, in 77. And then the first 6 issues just chronicled the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. So at the end of issue 6, you get to see the Death Star blowing up and all that stuff. And yay, it's over. All right. Now, Mike-DELL, I didn't even know there's another Star Wars movie coming out.
What? How is this possible, Mike-DELL?
This is absurd. But one of my favorite things on our radio show in the last 2 or 3 years, how long ago, whatever it was, Tuffy came on and he gave Larry and I his review of the last Star Wars, and he cut about a 20-minute angry tirade on the show about how much he hated that movie. Right, Tuffy?
That's correct.
Which one was this? You mean The Last Jedi or Solo?
Yeah, The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah. He was peeling the paint off the walls. He just screaming, yelling. It was great.
I'm not going to... Now, again, before the show started, we were kind of planning out how many tirades we were going to go on before we got into the meat of the comic. But I'll just give my 2-sentence review of Last Jedi, okay? I'll just say that when I first saw it, I kind of walked out and I was like, yeah, that was actually pretty good. And then the more that time has gone on, I have grown to hate it more and more. I don't hate it, but I hate about 75% of it. Put it that way.
Tuffy, give us your 2-sentence review of The Last Jedi or whatever it was.
Sitting in the theater, I've only seen it the one time, but it was, 5 or 10 minutes in when Poe Dameron starts making your mom jokes, and I was just like, okay, this is not going well. And then Princess Leia flew like a witch through space, and I was just like, all right, that's enough.
We'll have to do a separate episode dedicated to just Last Jedi.
But Tuffy, what's your history of Star Wars, Tuffy? Fill in the people. You love Star Wars, right? Ever since you were a kid?
I was born in 1984, so I first saw Star Wars, in the early 90s on the original VHS tapes, not the special editions.
Oh, okay.
And then just loved it ever since. Saw all the re-release special editions, have owned the DVDs, VHS, had the toys, those mid-late 90s toys that were released. Saw the prequels, didn't like them then because I was, a teenager, I think, when those came out. So I was too old to enjoy whatever George Lucas thought those were. When I saw The Force Awakens, my reaction to that was kind of like Mike-DELL's reaction to The Last Jedi, where I saw it and it was like, okay, that was pretty good. And then I watched it a couple more times, and every time I watch it, it's like, no, it's not. It's getting worse every time.
Yep. Now, Mike-El, you and I are a little older than Tuffy, so I was born in 75. You were what, 76?
76, yeah.
So we were just kids. I have a vague memory of, as a child, I think someone took me to see Star Wars when I was a child.
Really?
Like 2 years old or 3 years old.
Wow.
I seem to recall.
Well, there was re-releases, though. It was released in, 78, 79. So
like I just have a vague memory of sitting in a theater looking up at a giant screen, and then there was like space stuff on it. So I'm thinking it was Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But, so, Mike-El, what was your first memory of Star Wars as a child? When did you first start getting into it?
Well, I actually saw it on TV. So I'm not sure if it was broadcast or if it was like a pre-cable like type thing, but the weird thing about it is my parents actually they have an audio recording of us watching Star Wars for the first time. I'm not sure why they did this, but yeah, it does exist out there.
That is weird. Yeah.
But I'll tell you that growing up in the 80s, like Star Wars I was as obsessed with Star Wars as anyone could possibly be. Like I had like all the figures, all the toys, when they came out on VHS, I bought the original painted covers, then I bought them again when they got re-released. And then unfortunately I bought them again when they had the special editions. But yeah, I was obsessed with Star Wars as a kid. And I remember one of the things about those movies was whenever me and my friends talked about what our favorite movies were, it was always understood that we meant besides Star Wars, So.
Well, that's the thing that Tuffy missed out on coming on a little bit later. All the toys, all the figures, and because that was huge when we were little. I had all the Star Wars figures and everything, all the vehicles, and it really did dominate my life until I was about 7 years old, I would say.
For me, it was until I was about 37. But anyway.
But here's the thing. When I was a kid, loved Star Wars. And then about 20 years ago, I remember I was dating a Russian lady she was very nice. And she had never seen Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So I was like 24 or so. And I was like, all right, here, we'll go to Blockbuster Video. That's when they were still around. We rented the Star Wars. We came back and I showed her the Star Wars. And that was the first time I had seen it since I was a kid. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is terrible. This is just brutal.
Story makes no sense to me. Anyway, continue.
Like the acting and the writing in the original Star Wars is so bad. It is so bad. It's just terrible.
All right. Well, it's been good talking to you, Mike-DELL.
Come on. No, come on. You guys have to be objective. Yes, the story's great, the adventure, the all that stuff. But from a technical standpoint, the dialogue and the acting, Tuffy, come on. It's brutal. The first Star Wars.
I think me and Tuffy are of one mind on this. I can agree that the dialogue is, what's the word I'm looking for?
Wooden?
Let's put it this way. It's definitely outrageous, but for some reason the actors have a way of delivering it so seriously that I think they smooth over all the bumps. And I think
I would disagree. I would agree with Carrie Fisher, but like Mark Hamill and even Harrison Ford was terrible.
Oh, come on. No, Harrison Ford's never terrible. And the thing about Mark Hamill, I'm not a huge Mark Hamill fan, but he believed in his role and he took it, I think he took it seriously and he did it with passion. And so I really have nothing bad to say about the acting. Even in the first one, I thought it was great.
Now, the second one, Empire Strikes Back, that was the best written movie of all of them. And that was a solid, great movie because George Lucas didn't write it.
This is true. That's true.
Like, good. Yeah. Now, I loved Return of the Jedi as a kid because of the Ewoks, and I thought that first sequence where they're saving Han from Jabba and all that was great. But I know a lot of people do not like Tuffy, how do you feel about Return of the Jedi?
It's very good.
Yeah, see, I don't mind it at all. Mike-El?
You know what? It's another one where every time I watch it, it gets worse and worse, honestly. And like I watch it, I watch all three of them about once every year or every 2 years. Wow. And A New Hope and Empire always hold up. In fact, they get better every year. And Return of the Jedi, I mean, there's some parts I love about it, like all the scenes with Vader and the Emperor I love. There's certain things I like about the rest of the movie, but it just feels like a rushed sequel to the first two. And I mean, I still have affection for it because I loved it as a kid, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the first two.
Now, again, the first Star Wars, tremendous. It changed cinema, it changed everything. So it's a classic, no doubt. I'm not trying to say, but just from a technical aspect, there are some flaws. There are some flaws. All right, but now what do they call them? The prequels.
Prequels.
Whatever the hell they are. What was the first one? The Phantom Menace?
Phantom Menace.
Yes. And then the Clone Wars?
Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones. Well, the Clone Wars, is that the animated series?
Yes.
Okay. And then what was the third one?
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. Tuffy, how did you feel about those prequels?
I think like the first time I saw them, I thought they were fine, and then in retrospect, they are an abomination. All things Star Wars, and they make clear your point about George Lucas having little to do, like not writing, not directing Empire.
Yeah.
The prequels just make clear that Star Wars are great in spite of George Lucas being around and not because of it.
That's true. Yeah, I hate to say it, but
Mike-El, do you have a similar opinion of those prequels?
My opinion is far more tragic. I waited in line. There's video footage of me and my friends in line for Phantom Menace tickets. It was the most anticipated event of my entire life. Okay, and when I swear to God, within like the first frame of the movie, I was like, this is not going to be good. As soon as that girl leaned over and was like, yes, sir, I was like, what the fuck are we, what is this? And then I swear when I walked out, like, when you wake up, like, if you've ever had like a death in the family and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, did that really happen? Oh my God, it did. That's how I felt like the next day when I woke up. I'm like, no,
wow.
that couldn't have happened. That couldn't be real. Oh my God, it was real. That was really a movie.
That's how I feel every week after we do this show. So yeah, the prequels, I don't think I've ever watched any of them start to finish. I've seen parts of them, and yeah, they're terrible. And who was that kid that played Hayden Christensen? Was he the young Darth?
Wow. He was the teenager. Yeah, the teenager.
What an actor he was. Oh my goodness.
You want to talk about bad dialogue? Those movies are
oh my God,
1,000 times worse than anything in the original trilogy.
All right, so after the prequels, then they come back. We're like, oh, thank God it's over. We can just focus on the original. No. They come back with more. And what was the next one out, Mike-El? Was that the New Hope or?
No. The Force Awakens.
Oh, the Force Awakens. All right. Yeah. So confused. And that was the one with the Daisy Ridley girl, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. She's cute. So that was nice. And Adam Driver, right?
Adam Driver, great actor.
Hey, Mike-El, did you ever see Patterson?
No, I didn't. Maybe I will.
Very good. Yeah, Adam Driver's in it. You should give it a whirl. All right. So then the second one, what was that one?
Well, technically it was Rogue One.
Really?
Yeah, it was Rogue One. And then
but wasn't that? I thought that was like a side story.
It was.
Okay. But like in the main continuity, what would be the
next one? It'd be The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Okay. So then this next one that's coming up, what's this next one called again, Mike-El?
For the people who are listening, we have to mention Solo came out last year, and it is a side story, but it's still a Star Wars movie.
Okay.
And now, obviously, this year is going to be The Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of Skywalker. So that's the 9th movie in the main storyline.
Right.
And that's it. They're done, right?
No. They've already planned 2 new trilogies, a TV series, and God knows what else.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
I think one of those trilogies got sidelined, though. The Benioff and Weiss trilogy is not happening anymore.
Right. It's all kind of up in the air, to be honest, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say this. I turned on Star Wars. I officially lost all interest in Star Wars, and they became an enemy of mine. After George Lucas went back and recut those movies to monkey with them and to make Greedo shoot at Han Solo.
Yeah, that was horrible.
That is unforgivable. Right. Unforgivable. Because the great thing, I loved Han Solo as a kid. That's the other thing. Were you like Luke Skywalker or Han Solo guy, Mike-El?
Oh, absolutely Han Solo.
Yeah, Tuffy?
I think most people were, yeah.
See, I was a Luke Skywalker guy.
See, look at that. Okay. Luke Skywalker guy. Now, why did you like Luke Skywalker better?
I mean, he's the underdog. I don't have the Han Solo swagger. I never saw myself in Han Solo. I'm just the country bumpkin farm boy over here who picks up a lightsaber.
All right, I can see that. But yeah, Han Solo was the guy when I was a kid. I loved him, and one of the reasons why I loved him was because he was so sneaky and he shot Greedo under the table. Bang.
Absolutely, yep.
That was awesome. And then for George Lucas to go back in and change that, that is unforgivable. Unforgivable. So
well, and that's the thing is, up until that point, I can't even think of another movie where a director went back and changed like a scene so drastically.
Yes.
And it's like, if you're going to change a movie, you don't change a movie that everyone in the world has seen a million times, and that everyone loves.
But that is such a huge critical moment for Han Solo's characterization. Like, that defined who Han Solo was.
Exactly.
Like, that's right when we're meeting him for the first time too, So it's like, in that canteen and everything. Yeah. So after that, I'm like, I'm done. Fuck George Lucas. I'm done.
Understandable.
All right. So that's the overview of the Star Wars here. Now, Mike-El, well, first of all, Tuffy, did you even know there was a Marvel comic book of Star Wars back in the day?
No, I did not.
How about that?
You mean you didn't know until this week?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, the last issue came out when I was 2 years old. So
okay. Now, here's the thing. I have to point out, I love Star Wars. Like the movies, I can even the prequels I can watch over and over again because I just love Star Wars. But I have never ever gone beyond. Like, I've never played the video games. I've never read any of the novels. I have no interest in reading the novels. The comic books I've read simply because I'm a comic book fan, right? So it was just, they were around, and so I read them. But I really have no interest in the extended universe. So this is the only exception, is the Marvel Comics.
Now, when I was a kid, I did have the Star Wars comic books, but I looked up the old covers, Mike-El, to see which ones I had, it just going off memory. Sure. Because I don't have them anymore. But it looks like I got on like when they did the Empire that Strikes Back.
Sure.
Like when they did that. And then so I had like 3 issues, like 40 to 50 something.
Okay.
That was my run. So this issue 7, again, I was 3 years old when this came out. I did not have any of these.
Okay.
So this was a new experience for me. I should say that Marvel actually rejected Star Wars many times. And so did other comic book companies because they thought it was all hooey and nonsense.
Right.
Because I guess Lucas and his people, they were going around pitching it to different comic book places back in like 75, 76. And they were like, oh, this is nonsense. Stan Lee didn't want to do it. But who made the, do you know who made the big call here, Mike-El?
It was none other than Roy the Boy Thomas.
That's right. Roy Thomas. We seem to mention him every week on the show.
Yeah.
He was the guy who, he had another meeting with them and he saw, they gave him a visual storyboard or some images, just some drawings of what they envisioned it would look like, and it won him over. And he's like, oh, I see. Because they had always been pitching it as sci-fi.
Right.
And for those kids out there, Star Wars is not sci-fi.
No, not really.
It's space opera is basically what it is. And it's an adventure story, but it's not a sci-fi story. So when Roy Thomas saw the depiction of it as like an adventure tale, he's like, oh, well, this I can get behind, because sci-fi wasn't selling back then, hard sci-fi.
Right.
So he went to Stan Lee. The editor-in-chief at the time was Archie Goodwin, but Stan Lee was the publisher, and Roy Thomas and Stan Lee had a good relationship. So he convinced Stan Lee to give it a go, and they decided, all right, we'll make the Star Wars comic book. And yeah, the first comic was released April 12th, 1977. The movie premiered May 25th, 1977. So as Mike-El pointed out last week on the show, the comic book came out before the movie.
Yes, it did. And can we point out the most bizarre aspect about the cover of Star Wars #1?
I didn't even look at the cover. What's on the cover?
Well, for one thing, Darth Vader's green. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he is. I can actually, I'll send you the link right now, and then you can send it to Tuffy. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I don't know if I can send it to Tuffy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's right.
I've got it.
Yeah, Tuffy's got Google. He can look it up.
The link you sent me, I can access the entire Star Wars catalog here.
That's exactly. That's Mike-El's black market comic.
Yeah. Don't say what it is. Yeah.
We can't talk about that.
Yeah.
First rule of flea market fantasy: you don't talk about flea market fantasy. Right.
I mean, I have the whole stack in front of me.
Yeah. All right. So I'm trying to open it here. This black market link isn't really working for me. All right, here it goes. Star Wars. Yeah, Darth Vader is green. That is weird. Yeah. And Luke has a red lightsaber. That's also bad, right?
Yeah, it is. That's not his. It's the first movie was blue.
And it also looks like Princess Leia is a redhead. I don't know. That seems a little weird.
That might just be a comic book thing where they color black hair blue and they color everything's all off color. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
There's a lot. I mean, if you felt like you could actually read through it, there's they include the original scene with what's his name? Is it Biggs?
Okay.
Yeah, Tuffy, you probably know about this. There's a scene in A New Hope with Biggs that was filmed and cut out of the movie, but it's included in the comic. They also include the scene of Han Solo running into Jabba the Hutt on right before they get into the Millennium Falcon, and because it was in the original script, but it hadn't been filmed, so they didn't know what Jabba the Hutt would look like, so they just made it up, and he looks nothing like he does in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
What does he look like? I closed it out already.
He just looks like a kind of a fat guy, I think.
Oh, okay.
But he is an alien though. Like he has like an alien, visage.
Oh, nice. Visage.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. We can get back to number 7 though. Okay.
So yeah, like you mentioned earlier, Mike-El, issues 1 through 6, they adapted the movie, and then 7 starts up with new stories. And Jim Shooter, the editor-in-chief of Marvel from 78 and 87, he said that Star Wars single-handedly saved Marvel.
It's true, yeah.
Without the success of the Star Wars comic book, Marvel probably would have had to shut the doors. So look at that. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy now, all these years later, like, you don't even think about Star Wars being a comic book. Yet it was so monumental back then.
Right.
It saved Marvel. Crazy.
Right.
Marvel published Star Wars until 1986, and then they did the Ewoks and Droids series until 1987, and then that was it. And then Dark Horse took over the license in 1991, and they did a bunch of Star Wars stuff. And then the license returned to Marvel in 2015. Yep. So there it is. There's the Star Wars comic book history. All right, Mike-El. So this number 7, it's called New Planets, New Perils.
Yes. And I also have to point out this is the creative team continued over from the previous 6 issues. So it's still Roy Thomas writing, and it's Howard Chaykin drawing.
Yes.
So, and this is fascinating for me. Again, well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the cover, Mike-El, was drawn by Gil Kane.
Okay. I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Really?
Yep.
Jesus, that doesn't look like him at all.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't. Describe the cover for the kids.
So the cover is Han Solo shooting a laser gun. Behind him is a poorly drawn Chewbacca. And then there's like an alien behind them, and Han Solo saying, "Grab a laser gun, Chewie. They've got us surrounded." And then behind that it says, "All new Han Solo and Chewbacca on a world the law forgot." And that's it.
I like the fact that you got the dialogue bubble there in the yellow box with the big blurb.
Oh, there's also a poster on the wall. Yeah, wanted, dead or alive, Han Solo and Chewbacca the Wookiee reward.
And notice how Kane moved the lettering over so you can read everything.
Yeah, so it's not covered up by Chewbacca, right?
Yeah. Tuffy, how do you feel about this cover? Like, if you were a kid and you saw this cover, would you be, oh, yeah, I got to read this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chewie is beating up 2 aliens. He's got one in each hand.
Yep.
Han Solo is firing off, not his blaster, but a laser gun, like you say.
That is weird. It's not the Han Solo blaster that everybody likes, yeah. Something. All right, Mike-El. So again, New Planets, New Perils. The splash page here, we see Han like saying goodbye to everybody. There's Luke, there's Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and Han is holding both of Luke's hands like a lover.
I didn't notice that. That's true. Well, they're close now, right? I mean,
apparently
they're good pals. So yeah, and it's fascinating just because you see the original movie a million times. You don't really think about it, but it's like, yeah, here we go. Let's pick up the next day, and find out what happens. But Han is saying goodbye because despite what's happened, he still has a bounty on his head from Jabba the Hutt, right?
Yeah, and notice the sound effect there. Chewbacca only talks in sound effects throughout the issue.
True. Yes. The sound effect here is Gronk.
Yeah, so we get the debut of Rob Gronkowski, Hall of Fame tight end. in a Star Wars comic book. Gronk. But it's pretty weird because, like, where's that sound effect coming from? Is that like a machine? Oh, wait, no, that's Chewbacca. All throughout the whole issue, it's like that, like these big sound effects. But that's how he talks. So, all right. Yeah, Mike-El, you mentioned they continue the story from the next day, but that was the tricky part of writing these comic books, because this was the first time anyone had ever written outside of the movies for Star Wars,
Right.
So Roy Thomas, they had to figure out a way to tell a story about Star Wars without telling the Star Wars story, because they couldn't use all the other, like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. They couldn't continue the movie's story because they didn't want to fuck up the next movie. And
right.
George Lucas told them to stay away from all that stuff. So they had to think of an idea of, well, how can we tell Star Wars stories without monkeying up the big story? So what did they do, Mike-El?
Well, they just in the comic books, they decided to just follow Han and Chewie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if did you mention that it's because Harrison Ford was not under contract to do a second film.
I did not know that was even a factor.
Yeah, that's actually partly why, is because they didn't know if he was going to come back. So they figured, well, if you do stories with him, it won't screw up his story because he might not even be in the next movie. So that's why they focus on Han and Chewie in this. But in the novels, the first novel, I believe, was Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And that story focuses on Luke, Leia, and Vader, but has no Han Solo. Because I don't know if it was written before or after this, but that was why. It's because they didn't even know if Harrison Ford was coming back. So they just focused on the other group. So, yeah.
How about that? Yeah, the first Star Wars novel was like a novelization of the film, and it actually came out in November of 1976 before the film. And that was written by a fellow named Alan Dean Foster.
Yes.
And then he went on to write that other novel that you talked about.
Splinter of the Mind's Eye, yeah.
Yeah, I think that came out in maybe 78 or after.
Okay.
That. And then he went on to write a bunch of other Star Wars stuff and Star Trek stuff. He was credited with writing the Star Trek motion picture. Writing credit on that.
Did he? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so he has a bunch of Star Wars and Star Trek credits. All right, Mike-El. So yeah, the first panel here in the comic book, we see them saying goodbye, Han saying goodbye, and I noticed when C-3PO is talking to R2-D2, it's spelled R2 A-R-T-O-O, which I think is weird. R2.
Well, that's how it was in the toys as well. It always included both. Yeah, it would always say like phonetically and then the number as well.
Interesting. All right, so then what happens, Mike-El?
So then they go off on their way, and the first thing that happens is actually there's a funny little factoid. Not a little factoid, but there's a little bit of a discrepancy here with the movie where they talk about how they have to wait before they can jump to hyperspace. So they show them flying, and then Han Solo says, though we've a few more light years to go before we can even cut to hyperspace. And so they show them flying past all these, fantastic worlds, which are really cool, I think, actually. One of them is like a city inside a globe or something. And then the other two are just kind of typical stuff. But anyway, and then soon after that, they are basically ambushed by space pirates.
Yes. Now, Tuffy, were you terrified by the space pirates?
Yeah, they're not space pirates. They're space pirates.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The way they set it up, they're wondering if it's the Empire. And Chewie's like, Haru. That's what Chewie says. And they know, and then Han says, you've got a point there, pal. It could very well be ... space pirates.
Yes. Oh, see, I was mixing up your Haru with his Harunk, which is the next page. I was confused there for a minute.
Yes, Harunk is the next page.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike-El.
Okay, so basically, there's a mini space battle. And it's funny because this ship basically kind of looks like a Star Destroyer from the bottom, but they get sucked into it by a tractor beam. And then just like in the Star Wars movie, they get boarded. And when they come on, it's a little bit, when these space pirates board, it's a little bit confusing because one of them is, in fact, a stormtrooper.
Yeah, they say he's got his armor from a fallen stormtrooper. This one guy just wears the armor.
I wonder if that was just explanation added in later by Roy Thomas, because like, oh shit, he drew it in there. He wasn't supposed to, but we'll just explain it away. With
my favorite thing about the space pirates, though, is the main guy. What's his name? Jimmy or something?
Oh, Jimmy. No, it's Crimson. Wait, what is his name? Oh,
Crimson Jack.
Crimson Jack. Crimson Jack. He walks in. He's a redheaded dude with a beard, and he's holding his laser gun, but he's also not wearing pants.
That's a good point. He's bare-legged. You're right. You're right.
He's just in his underpants. So yes, that is terrifying.
It's also ridiculous that this other guy who's running in the left, he's got like, what are those things called? The pirates wear that's like a bandana. What's that?
Oh, yeah, he's got a bandana. Also, he's carrying a cutlass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pirate sword. Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I got to say, they're not very intimidating. Like, if I saw these guys come on the ship, I'd be like, yeah, I could take them.
Yeah. And they also have like an actual, like a 19th century revolver, it looks like, eh?
Kind of, yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And I like how, if you notice, Chaykin seems to draw Han Solo with a different haircut in every panel.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like in the middle panel, what is that? Is that the Rachel? You know what I mean? Or is that Sarah Fox? I can't tell.
It looks like the little Dutch boy.
Yeah.
And then we get, and he also seems to draw Chewbacca. Sometimes he looks like Chewbacca. Sometimes he looks like Bigfoot.
Yeah. Very inconsistent art. I mean, and Howard Chaykin, for those that don't know, is actually a really good artist. But this is not good. This art here is not good.
Yeah, we'll get into Chaykin a little bit later here. But yeah, then Mike-El, we just see a hand with a gun pointing. We don't see who it is, but you can tell it looks like, well, first of all, it looks like the hand is rubber, like rubbery fingers, no clear joints. Yeah. But it's got fingernails. It's a lady. So then the next panel we see it is a lady.
Yes, it is.
Jolly.
Jolly. Her
name. And she's a Spitfire, this Jolly. She wants to kill Han Solo. She's mad. I don't know.
So then basically, so then they end up stealing the reward money from A New Hope that they worked so hard to get.
Yeah. Because the plan was for Han and Chewie to take all the money they got from helping the Rebel Alliance. And really, why do the Rebels have so much money? I'm concerned about this.
It's because Princess Leia's rich.
Oh, okay.
So she's the one that promised them the money in the first Star Wars movie.
Okay, so they gave them all the money, and their plan is to go pay off Jabba the Hutt.
Right.
That's the plan. And that's where they're going. But these space pirates, these damn space pirates, they come in and they steal all their money. So now Han is screwed. He's like, oh, well, I'm losing all our money, plus Jabba still wants to kill me. So what do, Mike-El?
So then they decide, well, let's just go hang out at this planet. What is it called here? Aduba 3.
Aduba 3.
Yeah.
And way better than Abba Aduba 2.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, there's a really good quote in here somewhere about going a spice, something about spices in the Outer Rim. I'm trying to find it. I can't.
Is it, okay, let me see here.
Is it about the chromium rush that happened on Aduba 3, but with false alarm, the result of mine seeding by greedy speculators?
Sure. I could have sworn there's something about going to the Outer Rim with spice traders or something. I don't know.
Oh, let's see here.
Fuck. I don't know.
No, I don't see that. I don't remember that.
I'll keep looking for it. All right, Mike-El, let's resume the story. You pick.
Okay, so basically they fly down to this Aduba 3. And it's funny, the first thing I notice about this is that even though it's a different planet, it basically looks like Tatooine. It's a desert planet with similar architecture. And of course they have what is it called, a bantha, which, why would there be the same wildlife on this planet as on Tatooine, right? But okay, fine. And then they also notice, Han Solo points out, he's like, hey, isn't that buggy dressed like some kind of priest? Can't identify the exact religion. I guess I shouldn't have skipped so much Sunday school as a kid, because apparently he's from 20th century Earth.
Yeah, Sunday school. Yep.
And then they sort of witness this fight that's going on between all these different aliens, and they decide to. It's a really weird sequence, because I honestly couldn't follow what was going on, but they sort of join in on this fight. And then, you kind of turn the page and you see them, like, where did they go? And then you see them kind of in the background, like, doing, like, basically wrestling moves on these guys. While in the foreground, you see this bantha with this cyborg guy in this glass coffin. And then, so they end up winning the fight. And it's this really weird setup where you find out that this guy explains that the guy in the coffin is a Borg, which is like 10 years before Star Trek had the Borg, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you find out that whoever buries this Borg has the right to have his fortune. And so Han Solo's like, well, shit, well, I could use some money. So,
well, the problem here, Mike-El, the big dispute going on is that the space alien people in this community, like pilots, are always buried on this hill of honor. And they don't believe that a dirty, filthy robot, half man, half robot, should be buried on that hill with the other heroes of their planet or city or whatever. So it's racism, Mike-El, is what it is.
Yes, which kind of plays off the line in Star Wars where the bartender says, we don't serve your kind here, right?
Yes.
So I think it's the idea that everybody in the galaxy is kind of racist towards droids and robots and Borgs and whatever.
But the little bug-eyed priest guy, he's a man of the cloth. He wants everyone to be loved. So he's trying to take the guy and bury him up there, and the people are fighting him, and they're going to kill him. And then Han and Chewie save him, and he's like, hey, well, if you go bury him, you can have his money. Because that's tradition. So Han's like, all right, let's go bury this guy. And but in the battle, Tuffy, that Bantha or whatever, he gets shot and dead. He gets killed.
Well, that happens there's actually another battle. That's the next battle. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm jumping ahead. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what confused me too. Because I looked through it again today, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was another. So they're walking through the city, then they get attacked, then there's another battle, and that's when the Bantha gets killed.
Yeah. My favorite in this battle is it initiates because the people on the side just hit Han and Chewie in the head with rocks.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very good.
And they call them dirty Borg lickers. Ooh.
So yeah, this fight gets a little bloody because Han's trying not to hurt him. And again, there's one picture here where he looks like Dandy Don Meredith, for you football fans out there, where the guy has the axe above him. That's Don Meredith, I swear to God. All right, so but Han just shoots him with his laser because he's like, all right, I got to kill him because it's too much. So then once he shoots, Chewbacca goes nuts. He goes crazy, and he just starts mowing down everybody with his laser gun. Right. And they're just opening fire, killing everybody. Tuffy, what'd you think of this big fight scene?
Yeah, I mean, that's just his Wookiee nature, according to the comic. It's just to slaughter people, I guess.
That filthy Wookiee. It is a Wookiee nature.
As soon as he sees first blood, his Wookiee nature manifests itself in its usual manner, and he just starts killing.
Yeah. And we get a lot of good sound effects from Chewbacca throughout this. Grurg, Urk. Got another Gronk there at some point.
Yep. Then the laser gun is Zik.
So they kill everybody. It's just a massacre. Dead bodies everywhere. Yeah. and then the bug-eyed priest is like, uh-oh, look, the Bantha's dead. And we just see a picture of the Bantha with the blood leaking out of his nostril. So that's sad. And Chewie lets out a harunk and just puts the robot coffin on his back and starts carrying it up the hill.
Right. And then they bury the Borg, and that's it. So now the fortune is his, and so now Han Solo's rich again.
Yeah, but here's my favorite part of the comic book, though. I'm sure Tuffy agrees with me. They go to like a cantina, nothing but space hookers.
Yeah. And then we have Chewbacca. Chinoop. What is that?
Yeah, I think we all know what Chinoop means. Yeah. I think we all know. But Chaykin's drawn these space hookers. He's like, like he's trying to intentionally make them super sexy, but it's not working. It's not working. But Han picks up a blue-skinned lady at the bar. And,
right.
How are you, little lady? What's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this? I hope. I don't know what that means.
I have no idea what that means. Yeah, I thought I was like, I read that like 5 times. Like,
I guess what he's trying to say is, I hope you're a nice girl.
Yeah, that could be it.
It's very clumsy. And so he starts walking out of the cantina with this blue-skinned lady, and they're going to go make the sweet, sweet love. But he wants to look back to make sure Chewie's okay. And we cut to Chewie, and he's saying Gronk, and he's got one arm around a space hooker. He's got a space hooker on each arm. So he's like, oh, well, I guess he's okay. But then when Han turns around, the blue-skinned girl's gone, and now we have like 3 Asian-looking dudes. Like they look like monks or something. And what do they say, Mike-El?
They say, we have a proposition to put forth to you, honored off-worlder. It is a most agreeable proposal, we assure you, unless, of course, you have an unfortunate aversion to dying. That's the end.
Who would have an aversion to dying? And so next issue, Trouble in Paradise, and that's it. That's number 7. So Tuffy, what do you think? What are your first impressions of your first Star Wars comic book you've ever read? What do you think?
It's great. It's a great little side story. I'm not sure it really fits in the continuity between Star Wars and Empire, but it's not canon. So, you know, the comics are in the S canon, which is not canon.
Wow.
And I mean, none of this really matters anymore because this was all pre-Disney, and then Disney said none of it matters, and we're just going to make up our own stuff. So, but in the Lucas universe, this was not canon even long before all that. So,
but do you see why I brought Tuffy on the show, Mike-El? S canon. He knows there's an S canon. I have no idea what that even means.
I don't really know either at all. Is there specific letters for each like continuity, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I had to look up the specifics. Like, I knew there were different levels of canon in the Lucasfilm version. So there's like the George G canon is the movies.
Okay.
T canon is television. So that would be like the Clone Wars animated show. I don't think that includes the Christmas special, though.
Okay. Okay.
C canon is continuity canon, which is when they started realizing they need to have something that sort of governs the universe. So this would be like the Timothy Zahn books and stuff like that, where they have to kind of fall in a general thing. And then S canon is stuff that basically came out before they realized there has to be some kind of through line for everything, and it can't just be whatever you say. So that's like the Marvel comics, a couple other things. Some of the stuff was folded into the other stuff, retconned into the canon later. But this is not canon.
So even with the Disney reboot, do they consider the Timothy Zahn novels as canon or not canon anymore?
No, Disney said everything that was C canon, which is that within the Lucas works that are continuity, everything is okay. Those became a Legends universe, which is this all used to be the canon, but now we're making it up ourselves because we don't want to risk having to pay previous authors for writing credits, basically.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. Okay. It's funny because when I was a kid, I never had any interest in the novels. You know, some people are obsessed with the novels because they just got to find out what happens to these characters. But now that I've read this comic, I'm not sure if it's because I'm just a comic book fan, but I was really into it. And this is the first one, Mike-DELL, the first comic we've done in Flea Market Fantasy where when I got to the end, I was like, oh, no.
Really?
Don't. Yeah, I was like, I want to read more of this, you know? So I'll definitely be reading the next issue. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Tuffy, I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're giving the big overview. But Tuffy, did you, when you read this issue, when you finished, were like, yeah, I'd like to read more Star Wars?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. How about that? All right. Well, let's talk about the creative team here real quick. The writer, again, was Roy Thomas. And we've talked about Roy Thomas many times, so we don't need to go through all that stuff again. But let's just talk about his history here with Star Wars. He did the first 10 issues, and then he quit. And it was difficult coming up with these plots. So they didn't monkey with the movie ideas and everything. And that eventually led to his dismissal because he got in trouble with George Lucas, Mike-El, when he created a character called Jackson.
Oh.
Jaxxon. Tuffy, are you familiar with the character named Jackson in the Star Wars universe?
No.
Okay. Mike-El, are you familiar with Jackson?
I believe he's the pink rabbit, correct?
Green. He's a giant green rabbit.
Green rabbit, okay.
Yeah, he's basically Bugs Bunny in space. And I guess he's a bounty hunter. And where this Star Wars storyline goes from here is eventually Han gets together with a bunch of other like bounty hunters and stuff. And they go after, they join forces and go on a mission. And Jackson is one of these guys. And George Lucas saw this giant 6-foot green bunny. And he said, all right, enough of that nonsense. You know it's bad when the guy who created Jar Jar Binks thinks that, no, this is where we draw the line. No Bugs Bunnies. So Roy Thomas got so upset that George Lucas was trying to monkey with it. He says, "All right, I quit." So he just quit. And Howard Chaykin also left with him, and Archie Goodwin stepped in to do the writing. And who's the fella? Infantino, Mike-El.
Carmine Infantino, yes.
he took over the artwork with issue 10. And then later, our buddy Walt Simonson came in.
Right.
So that's something. But yeah, so that's why Roy Thomas left, is a dispute over a giant green rabbit. All right. So the artist Howard Chaykin, born in Newark, New Jersey in 1950. At 19, he became a gopher for Gil Kane. So Gil Kane was his mentor. And here it is, Gil Kane doing the cover of this issue. How about that? It all comes together. Circle of life, Mike-El. But in 1971, Chaykin worked as an assistant for Wally Wood, another legend of the genre.
Yes, absolutely.
Next, he apprenticed with Neil Adams.
Wow. He's learning from the best here, eh?
Yeah, then Neil Adams got Chaykin his first work at DC. And here's a quote from Howard Chaykin. The problem for me was that by the time I became a professional, I lost any interest whatsoever in superhero comics. I'm not a horror guy, and I didn't know what the hell to do. What I wanted to draw is guys with guns, guys with swords, and women with big tits. And that was the extent of my interest in comics at the time. End quote. So there you go.
He's an intellectual, can I say?
Yeah, so he didn't like the superhero, so he drew a lot of stuff for DC and for Marvel, like adventure stories, a lot of adventure stuff, little short stories and anthologies and stuff. That was basically his niche. That's what he was doing until the Star Wars stuff came along. And back in those early days, when he was in his early 20s, Mike-El, he once lived in the same apartment building as Al Milgrom, Walt Simonson, and Bernie Wrightson.
Wow.
So the four of them used to hang out together and talk comics and just, that's how they live their lives. So yeah, he drew a bunch of adventure stuff. His first big superhero gig was a 12-page Batman story for Detective Comics, number 441 in 1974. Also in 1974, he created the character Cody Starbuck for Star Reach number 1. Are you familiar with Cody Starbuck, Mike-El?
I don't think so. Maybe I've heard the name, but that's about it.
Yeah, he kind of sounds a lot like Han Solo, basically.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
He's like a ne'er-do-well, rapscallion space pirate kind of guy, I guess. Star Reach number 1, that was a comic series. It was like the first independent comic book published in the United States, I believe. It was right there. One of the first big independents.
One of the first, yeah, for sure.
And it was like a space anthology. So Cody Starbuck was a regular in there from 1974 to 79. And then Chaykin went to Marvel and landed the Star Wars gig because Lucas had seen some of his space adventure stuff.
Really?
So it all paid off. And he drew the Star Wars promotional poster that appeared at the 1976 San Diego Comic-Con to announce the movie. And the poster is very famous, and it is simply known as the Chaykin among collectors. How about that?
Really? Interesting.
And he drew the first 10 issues, and then he left when Thomas left. In 1983, Chaykin created American Flag.
Yes.
For First Comics. He was both the writer and the artist. Now, Mike-El, do you know anything about American Flag?
I have read a few of the issues, but honestly, I don't really remember them.
When I was a kid, I'm sure, Tuffy, you have no knowledge of this, correct? American Flag?
Correct.
And it's flag with 2 G's and an exclamation point, by the way. But when I was a kid, I remember seeing pictures of American Flag, like the covers and stuff, but I never read any of it. But basically, it's a story set in like 2031, and the U.S. government, the world's falling to pieces. The U.S. government actually relocates to Mars, all the good people. And the American Flag guy, that character, the protagonist, he's still on Earth. And Tuffy, he's ruling Chicago, kind of. He's like the mayor of Chicago in a way. He's overseeing Chicago. And it's just like disputes going on, and I'm sure there's robots and aliens, who knows, but that's basically American Flag. All right, so then in 1985 he created Black Kiss, a 12-issue series for Vortex Comics about sex-obsessed vampires. Mike-El, anything there?
I've heard of it. That's about it. I'm not a huge fan of his writing, to be honest, so I've just never really followed his career.
My first experience with Chaykin was in 1989. He did the Nick Fury and Wolverine graphic novel.
Right.
I think it was called The Scorpio Connection. And I'll tell you what, Mike-El, because back in the day, there used to be, I can't remember the name of this company, but they would send you little catalogs and you could order comics that would be coming out. You could order them in advance, and I would order stuff every couple months, and they would ship them to me. And so I ordered this graphic novel because I'm like, I loved Wolverine. So I'm like, oh, Wolverine graphic novel, here we go. And it came in the mail, and I opened it up, and I was like, wow, this fucking sucks. Because Chaykin has a very distinctive style. It's much better than what was in this Star Wars issue, but it's still not what I liked.
Sure.
So I was very upset. But anyway. All right. Then in 2006, 2007, he did Blade issues 1 through 8.
Really?
That's something.
I didn't know that.
And then in 2008, 2009, Punisher War Journal Volume 2, he did issues 16 to 25. Those are pretty much the lengthiest runs he's ever had on a title outside of this Star Wars. Throughout his career, he did a lot of independent stuff, creator-owned stuff for smaller companies. But in terms of the big two, Star Wars, Punisher War Journal, and Blade were pretty much his longest runs. And he also, Mike-El, he co-wrote 9 episodes of the 1990 Flash TV series.
Really? Huh.
Do you remember that show?
Oh, absolutely. I saw every episode. Yeah.
So he co-wrote 9 of those episodes. And one of the episodes he co-wrote starred Mark Hamill as the Trickster.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
So again, Mike-El, it all ties together.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill stars. So there you go. There's your Howard Chaykin. All right. So how'd you feel about the writing of the issue, Mike-El, Roy Thomas?
Oh, I'm not a huge Roy Thomas fan. I mean, I think at this point he was a pretty standard Marvel writer. Like, as I said earlier, the dialogue is a little bit out of character, from the movie. And there's some narration that's really overdone in here, but that's typical of Roy Thomas. So, but the one thing I could say is, like I said earlier, it definitely sucked me in enough that I want to read more. So he's got to be doing something right,
Tuffy, how'd you feel about the writing?
It's like Han Solo is like a 1920s street tough.
I can see that. Yeah, a little bit. Mike-El, what was the other? I think the other Roy Thomas issue that he wrote that we did was Fantastic Four, right? With the big monkey.
Yes, that's right.
And if you recall, we had a similar complaint about the dialogue stuff, but I really like the way that issue was structured in the plot, and I got to say, I like the plotting here as well. Like, this is good stuff. They got the fortune. It looks like they're made. They're going to pay off Jabba, and boom, something goes wrong. That's space true. Pirates, those filthy space pirates. They come in, they steal their money. So now what do? Well, they got to go on another adventure. And here, they're just walking around minding their own business. Boom, they get roped into this one adventure about burying the robot, and now they go get some space hookers. And then, boom, they get roped into another adventure because of the space hookers. So, yeah, it's good plotting. I like it. So
I'll give you that. Yep, absolutely.
Now, I did find my favorite line of dialogue. This was back when the space pirates, they jump on the ship there with Han and Chewbacca, and they have him as their prisoner. And then Han's talking to him, and he's surprised that Crimson Jimmy, or whatever his name is, that he has a big spaceship. And he says, but when did you get a second-class scavenger? But when did a second-class scavenger like you pick up even a cast-off cruiser? Last I recall, you were still ambushing spice caravans on the outer rim.
There you go.
That's clearly a euphemism.
Okay. All right.
He's taking a shot at Crimson Billy for, liking a certain type of activity.
Okay, whatever
we
you
won't get into. Right. But he's clearly taking a shot at him there. Yeah, spice caravans on the outer rim. All right, so there you go. There's Roy Thomas. Now, Chaykin's art. All right, we got to talk about this. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on here.
No, and let's be clear. Before we say anything, Tuffy, how much of a comics fan are you?
I had my dad's cousin who's like 15 years older than me. When he was probably like 25 or 30, had just stacks and stacks of Spider-Man and X-Men comics that he just gave to my brothers and I. Nice. So I read a lot of those. And then I had another cousin who was on the DC side. So I got, read some Spider-Man and Batman on that side. Like my comics highlight would be the Nightfall saga, probably.
Okay. So you're familiar, like you're familiar enough to know that this comic art is not particularly great.
Yeah.
But I do have to interject in case Howard Chaykin is listening.
Yes.
He is a legend in the industry.
Yeah.
I believe he was recently, if not currently, he's actually like sort of an instructor at Marvel, where he's one of the people that actually teaches the artists how to kind of use the page as a graphic design sort of, in a graphic design kind of way. So he is definitely a legend. He's an innovative artist. He's been around forever. But yeah, this art is not like, there's definitely some images in this that are really good. Like when the bantha is dead, kind of in the middle of that one page, that's a great image. But then there's other images that are just so sloppy. And like you said, like the haircuts change panel to panel, and Chewbacca changes panel to panel. So overall, it's just kind of inconsistent.
Yeah, there's like one or two panels where like, oh yeah, there's Chaykin. I can see that's Chaykin.
Right.
But then the rest of it is just like, I don't know. It's like someone's first attempt at drawing some of these. Like if you, the big fight scene where they're helping out the bug-eye guy, there's a big panel at the top of the page where you see the bantha pulling the robot, and then you see Han and Chewie in the background fighting.
That's exactly what I was talking about. That confused me. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really want to have a fight scene with it in the background.
Exactly.
And but look at how Han Solo is drawn there. That is what?
Yeah, I know. Look at his haircut. I know.
That is nuts. That is nuts. And yeah, I've never read a comic book where the main character changes appearances so much. He looks like a completely different man in every panel.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Not just a haircut, facial features, everything. I don't know what's happening.
The more I look at this, you're right. He looks like grotesque, like just scribbled together, like nothing like Harrison Ford. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think Chaykin, his best work, when you see like prime Chaykin, it's very stylized, sharp angles, kind of sometimes his faces will get scrunched up, but it's very stylized. So when you look at it, you're like, oh, that's Chaykin. That's Chaykin. So you don't really get that here. This looks like, I don't know, how old was he in this when he was doing this?
Well, I don't know.
I think he's 27 when he was doing this. So he's still, and he'd been in the business there for 7 years. So, I would expect more than this, is what I'm saying.
Even if you go to digital page 14, okay, now look at the shot, the face of Han Solo's face on the right-hand side. You see that?
I don't see page numbers.
Oh, okay. Well,
what's happening?
It looks like an average-looking Caucasian leading man. Let's put it that way. It doesn't even look like Harrison Ford, but he looks like a typical comic book guy. You flip the page over, and all of a sudden, he has a completely different shaped nose. He has like a big bags under his eyes. He has a different haircut. Like, it's like you said, it's a different person. It's ridiculous. But anyway.
Yeah, and same problem with Chewbacca. And a lot of the backgrounds, there aren't any. It's just solid color. They'll just throw in a solid color.
True.
That's fine. Whatever. So I got to tell you, Mike, if I'm drawing a comic book, I'm not drawing backgrounds either.
Yeah. There you go.
So the space hookers, they were nice. The space hookers. But otherwise, yeah, this isn't great artwork here.
No, it's pretty sloppy, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the other thing, too, I should point out, if you ever invite Howard Chaykin to your comic convention as a guest, don't ever list his only credentials as having drawn Star Wars. Okay, he'll get really pissed off because that's apparently happened before, and he's not very happy with that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you'd want to lead with his Cody Starbuck or whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
that'd be the best. Another interesting note about Chaykin: he's been married 4 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I should point out that G.I. Jolie and I have actually interviewed him.
Oh.
Yes, I will send you the link. He's the most intimidating person I've ever met. Okay.
Well, you need to meet more people.
Trust me. It was like interviewing Don Rickles on a bad day. I'll send you the interview and you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, he's an interesting guy, that's for sure.
Let's get him on the show, Mike-El. I want to hear you interview him, being all scared.
No, he wouldn't do our show. I mean, even when we interviewed him, he was ribbing us for the fact that we're clearly, cable TV. We're clearly Canadian. Like, I don't know. It was. I mean, he was nice about it, but he's just so much cooler than we are, or at least cooler than I am.
What if we do a tribute to Cody Starbuck?
Yeah, okay, maybe that'll do it.
But yeah, it seems like he does a lot of adult-themed stuff as well. Like that Black Kiss comic, The Sex Obsessed Vampires. He's drawing a lot of sex.
Yes.
A lot of sex. So make a note, Tuffy. Black Kiss. You're going to want to read that later.
Yeah, I'll be sure to check it out.
So there is. All right. So final thoughts on this issue, Tuffy.
It's a nice little, it's a nice palate cleanser from the Star Wars that has been in my life recently.
Okay.
Because I'm going to the premiere night showing for The Rise of Skywalker, and I'm not going to like it unless Crimson Jack makes a surprise cameo. Then I'll be all in.
I just pray to God he's wearing pants. So there you go. Mike-El, you seem to be a fan of this.
Like I said, it's one of those things where sometimes I can't believe I waited so long to read this. But yeah, now that I've read it, it's like, what was I thinking all these years? Of course I'm going to keep reading. I'm not saying it's great, but I'm definitely in for more. And by the way, I am also going to see The Force Awakens on opening night as well as the second night. I have tickets for Thursday and Friday, okay?
He sounds like our buddy Kevin Jank. Mr. Movie. He goes to see the movie like 3 times on a weekend. He'll see the same movie Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He doesn't care.
If I did that, I'd be a loser, okay? I only see it twice on a weekend. Anyway.
So, Mike-El, 1 out of 10. What do you give Star Wars number 7?
Ooh, okay. Compared to other comic books at this time, I'll give it a 7. I'll give it a 7, yeah.
Wow, okay. Tuffy, 1 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd say a 7 also. I mean, I don't know as many comic books from the 70s, but this art is consistent with what I think of as comic book art from the 70s.
No.
But that's probably because I read a lot of junk comic books from the 70s.
Yes. I would give it a 5, I think. The art is unforgivable. Sorry, it's just and the dialogue, it's hokey. But it's a fun little story. It's well plotted. And it's a generous 5. I'm giving it a generous 5.
Okay.
There you go. I got to say, Mike-El, this is issue or episode 12. Oh, maybe we should call them issues, Mike-El. What about it? Each episode's an issue. That might be better.
Maybe that'll make our listenership go up, eh?
This is episode 12.
There you go.
And so we've each had 6 picks.
Yes.
And I think if we're going head-to-head here, I'm 6-0. That's all I'm saying.
You think so, eh? Okay.
I think so.
I'll have to peruse the episodes again to see what I think about that.
I don't think there's even any doubt.
Yeah, okay.
So what I'm saying is, let's pick it up, Mike-El. Come on, let's go. Let's get some better books.
All right. I'll see what I can do.
But next week for me, are you ready for my pick for next week?
Sure.
We're going to go. This is another book I had as a kid, but I can't remember anything about it. I just remember I had the cover ripped, torn to pieces, but I loved it. Avengers number 160.
Okay.
From 1977.
Avengers number 160. Okay, I'll have to look this up.
This story, the Grim Reaper's on the cover, and it involves Vision and Wonder Man and the Grim Reaper and all that stuff.
Okay, I don't think I've ever seen this one before. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is a weird George Perez. Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird time for the Avengers because really the people you think as the Avengers, they're really not there, I don't think. This is like Vision, Scarlet Witch, Black Panther.
Wonder Man. Yeah.
Yeah, that group of Avengers. So, okay. But it's a good time. I think Beast is there as well at this point.
Yes, Beast. And it's written by Jim Shooter, who at this time was a really good writer.
Yeah, so there you go. Avengers 160 for next week.
Awesome. All right.
So, well, we got to thank Tuffy.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for coming on, Tuffy. This was great having you on.
Yeah, good to be here.
Are there any other Star Wars tidbits you'd like to say before you leave?
Just that doing a little bit of research on both Wikipedia and Wikipedia.
Oh, that's right.
For this episode, I stumbled down the hole to a synopsis of the rough draft that George Lucas wrote, and it is just never clearer that it is in spite of him, and he fell ass backwards into making a great movie with Star Wars.
That's true.
Because the draft opening crawl to the character names to the plotting is just unbelievably bad and wouldn't even make a B movie.
Well, I also heard that at one point there was Lucas, he wanted Han Solo to be a lizard, right? Like a lizard man.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. Yeah,
that's true. He also at one point wanted to have the whole cast be played by midgets. I'm not joking, okay? And all these ideas, I believe most of these were rejected by the producer, Gary Kurtz. He's just every idea Lucas has. Okay, I got it. Han Solo is going to be a lizard man. No, we're not going to do that. Okay. I got it. How about they're all played by midgets? Nope, we're not going to do that either. And then, thankfully, we got the movie that we got because of Gary Kurtz.
Yeah. Wow, how about that?
Han Solo was a Urelian, a race of large, slime-colored and deformed aliens with green skin and gills, hunted and trapped by Wookiees.
There you go.
Oh, see, so Wookiee, that would have been a real conflict there between Chewie and Han. That these two friends, they're these mortal enemies, are now friends. How about that?
That would have been interesting, actually.
Han Solo or Harrison Ford with gills. That'd be something. I'd pay for that.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those things where when other people talk about the names of the background characters in Star Wars, and you hear them and just think, "This is ludicrous. Why is this ever a thing?" And then you look at the rough draft, and it's like every character had one of those names.
Yeah, true.
Well, Mike-El, years ago on the LCS show, I did my top 11 Star Wars character names that sound like nicknames for the vagina. And
really?
I was going to do top 11 that sounded like nicknames for the penis for this episode, but I was looking through the list and I'm like, they all sound like penises. How can I cut it down to 11? And so,
do you have that list somewhere? Can you read it out now or no?
I could probably find it. I know Bib Fortuna was top 3.
Ooh,
Bib Fortuna was top 3, and I think Sly Snoodles was up there.
Yeah, that would be one.
But I can't remember number 1.
What about the Sarlacc pit? That had to be in there.
I think that was there near the bottom of the list. But yeah, the Star Wars, it's just nonsense. This whole thing's nonsense.
No. It's glorious.
When is the new movie coming out, Mike-El? Tell the kids.
Actually, what is it? Is it December 20th, I think?
Yeah, December 20, but so the Thursday night showings are the 19th then.
Wow, right. Merry Christmas to you guys. That'll be great. I can't wait.
The only gift I need this year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, Tuffy. And thanks, Mike-El.
Yes. So I guess we'll wrap it up. So that wraps up the 12th episode of Flea Market Fantasy. And we'll see you again next Tuesday for a random Bronze Age comic with your co-hosts, Mike-El and Mike-DELL.